She's an associate professor in computer science at the University of Florida. She's the co-founder and chair of the AI for K-12 initiative and director of Engaged Learning Lab. AI4K-12.org has developed national guidelines that articulate what students should know and be able to do with AI and curates a K-12 AI resource directory. Together, she and her team, building with the Georgia K-I AI infrastructure, they have provided high-quality AI education to over 1,500 middle school students and trained over 40 AI teachers and teacher leaders in Georgia and Texas. Through her work, Gardner-McCune aims to equip teachers, districts, and states to build their capacity to teach all students AI. Her passion is to spark young people's interest in computing, equip them with skills to develop technology, and inspire them to envision their future as a computational thinker, artificial intelligence, and computing professional. She is building an army across this globe. So thank you, and help me to welcome Dr. Gardner-McCune.
Just making sure I know how to use the controls here. Yep, it's always important. Let's see, can I be mobile? I'll be a little bit mobile. Okay. Thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate that, and I'm really honored to be here today. I started my professional academic career as a faculty member at Clemson, so South Carolina feels like home. And so I was asked to talk about the impacts of generative AI on education, both as a university faculty member and through my work with AI for K-12. And that has dovetailed into workforce development work that we've done in the state of Florida and also in Georgia. So, as many of us know, in 2022, we ushered in this new frontier of AI in education. For decades, researchers have been trying to figure out how do we make AI work in education to solve educational problems, but AI wasn't good enough yet. It wasn't good enough. And so we had, at best, a tutor that maybe could help you with some math and maybe help you with some reading, but writing an essay, giving you feedback, that wasn't a thing, right? It would give you very structured feedback that wasn't very flexible to the learner. And so finally, we're at a place, because we have these large language models, that we can actually study the structure of language and build models that can kind of, right, approximate a human tutor in some ways, right, if you prompt it right. So that free public access to AI, most generally, ChatGPT, and then all the ones that have come after that, really at scale. It's the scale part of it that's really important, that we were able to do it scale and we were able to do it cheap enough that we're able to have this innovation. So when I looked up how long it took for the next closest technology to be disruptive, it was TikTok. Out of all the social media, TikTok. And you know how long it took for it to get 100 million users? It took 9 months. 9 months. ChatGPT, 2 months to get 100 million active users. 2 months. This is the speed at which we're moving. So it's no wonder that we're caught off guard in November, 2 years ago. Like, wait, what's happening, right? How do we respond to that, right? And we've been getting our ducks in a row there. But this is tremendous. And then we are now at 2 years. I think as of last year, after 1 year of being implemented, they had 200 million weekly active users. That's how many people are using it. And approximately only 7% of the United States is using it every day. But who cares if you're not using it every day if you have that many weekly users, right? So this is really, really changing the game. And that's just one of many, many, many technologies and one of many applications that are built on that GPT framework. So when we are told, hey, buy the dream, it's a win-win situation. We can have personalized learning finally for learners and freedom for faculty members not to be doing all the minutia of admin, right? We can delegate the admin. I want us to think a little bit about what does it mean to delegate the admin, right? What does it mean for us as educators to do lesson planning? I'm teaching a new course, I have a new prep, and every week I'm looking at what am I doing this upcoming week? How do I adapt it? Because I have the syllabus, but as I'm engaging with the students and I'm making eye contact and I'm reading their assignments, I'm realizing, that concept didn't quite hit. I need to go back over it, right? So there is no, I just write a lesson plan and it just works, right? You're always adapting. That's what we do as educators. So what does it mean that we're, going to be relinquished from doing some of that admin? Isn't that part of the creativity and some of the joy, right? I'm not talking about the paperwork of submitting that lesson plan to the administrator. I'm talking about the engaging with learning and sparking that curiosity within them. So there's a number of large language model applications out there for education. Here are the top three that my Georgia and Texas teachers gave me this weekend. I said, what are the top ones? And they're like, Conmigo's awesome, because I want to get personalized feedback to my students, and Conmigo allows me to do that. So they have both tools for students and for kids, right? So students, students and faculty members, right? So it's offering both best of both worlds, and then similar Magic School and CurriPod, right? And I have not used these tools. I've used other ones, but these are the ones that they swear by. So ultimately, again, we have this idea of being freed up to have one-on-one learning or small group learning where we can really get to know how students are thinking and kind of nudge them in the direction that we want to go and help them really foster their understanding and ideas. But as I was sitting here over lunch, I heard what I always hear, which is efficiency. Efficiency. And I want us to be aware of what does it mean to be efficient in learning, right? Because efficiency and learning really don't meet, right? Because we all learn at different rates. And so if we're trying to make things efficient, maybe we're missing the mark, right? We as professionals might want to make some things efficient, but making learning efficient for our students might mean we're missing learning opportunities. So I want to say that this is marketing copy, right? This is what people tell us that we want. It's going to make your life better, right? And we bought it because we're consumers, we're Americans, it happens, right? But we need to really reflect on what it might actually mean for us. What it might actually mean for us is before GPT, right? I will say chat, so BCAC. Before we had to prep for multiple classes, possibly differentiate for 3 or 4 ways, depending on who we had in that class, grade papers, do all the things, right? And then after, the reality is, the promise is, we're going to have all this free time. But what if we can't really gauge what our students are doing very well because we've delegated that responsibility of grading and delegated that responsibility of feedback? And even though we're walking around with students, we know we need to look at multiple data points to really see where that student is. So does that mean we're going to have more time and then we're going to differentiate? Does that mean we're going to differentiate for each kid? What does that mean? Does this mean I'm actually going to spend more time lesson planning than I did before? So as adults, we're using generative AI technologies to make ourselves more efficient, right? And that complements our existing skills, our training, our experiences, all of those things. So what does it take to prompt, right? When we prompt, we're requiring ourselves to conceive of an idea. We think about it, we structure it in our own minds, and then we construct prompts to produce the result that we have in mind, right? Then we interrogate that response to say, is this really what I wanted, right? Because we know how to do that. This is what we do with our teaching assistants. This is what we do with our students. We know what we want to see, and we prompt them till we can get there. We scaffold them till they get there, right? So we do that, right? And essentially, we're coaching the AI. And so we have a vision of result, we have task framing, we're able to break it down. Here's all the skills that we are using. I ask you, have our students developed those skills yet, or is that what we're imparting into them? Is that what their learning educational experience is about, right? Is learning those skills. But what happens if they don't know to value those skills and they just delegate that responsibility? Because that's what happens with cheating, is we go, I'm no longer responsible. I need the answer. I need the paper. I need the homework done, right? And so we've now made learning about production and not about transformation. So I want us to consider when students are using these large language models or things built on it, and I know there's guardrails, right? And there's promises of, keeping kids safe and not giving them the answers. But let's be honest, kids get what they want to get. I know I was not allowed to have the phone after 9, but I found a way to get on the phone after 9 as a kid. They're going to find a way, right? So do they have the skills that we have to use AI effectively to help them learn? When they're using ChatGPT, does it prevent them from developing that knowledge? And how does our instruction need to help to change to help them develop that knowledge? Yes. Some people say to be good prompt engineers because that's all they're going to need to know how to do. That's like saying, all I need to know how to do to be an engineer or a computer scientist or a professor is know how to Google. And we all know that's a myth. So what do we need to do to make them good learners? So how are students currently using ChatGPT and other Gen AI-powered tools? So, there's not a lack of articles out there, right? So this one I happened to find this past weekend, and one of my colleagues that actually, the one office over, she's quoted in this one, talking about how students are cheating and the issues of ChatGPT. And this was, this was in August of this year. And so what I did here was I just put a quote on here from a Texas teacher. She's a Texas high school teacher, and she says she's seeing an increasing use of ChatGPT on homework and things like that, and partially because it's freely available, it's easy to use, and she claims students are lazy. I didn't say it, she said it, but I'll just quote her, right? So they want to get their assignments done quicker so they can do the thing they really care about. Right? What does that mean about the type of assignments that we're giving them that they don't care about it, right? They're not excited about learning it. Maybe there's something we need to do differently. This came out in the Chronicle of Higher Education on, I think, Friday or Saturday of last week, where Middlebury College did an annual survey, and they showed that there's an increased cases of students opting to tell you that they're cheating. And 2019 is 35%. In 2024, look at that number, 65%. These are honor code violations, right? Like, you can get kicked out of school for cheating, right? I mean, maybe not your first time, but if you're a repeat offender and if you're dependent on ChatGPT, you might be a repeat offender, right? How does this put you in jeopardy, right? And so how do we help students understand their academic, not just academic integrity, that like my work has to be my own work and this is basically like plagiarism, but actually to have ownership of their learning. So I had the honor this past spring to be on one of our computer science undergraduates' honor thesis committee. And so I asked her if I can pull some of her slides because I love the work she did. She said, as a student, I'm curious about how my fellow students are using ChatGPT to do their homework. And I want to study this. And so this is what she studied. And so I have a couple of slides here from her thesis defense. Her name is Christina Gardner-McCune, and she's actually at Microsoft right now. And so, this figure here says the use of ChatGPT aligns with the principles of academic integrity. You can see the majority of them recognize that, strongly disagree, it does not align, but there's so many towing the line in the middle because they're waiting for us to change the policies so that way they can use it without worrying about being caught cheating, right? But this is small n. We're only, there's 134 students. I'm not using this to show statistical significance or anything. I'm using it as a qualitative way for us to have a conversation about some of the things that we're seeing in these other articles. So she asked them, how did they use ChatGPT? So she sets up this experiment where, one group can't use ChatGPT at all, so that's her control, and then her experimental group, they get to choose if they use ChatGPT or whatever large language model they want. It could be Copilot, because it's a programming assignment. And what she found that students were doing was mostly they were using it for debugging and using it for syntax, and some of them were using it to get started on an assignment because they really didn't know where to get started. So kind of like a writing assignment. But what they found was there was a percentage, so if you look at that first bar, did you copy and paste the entire question from Edugator? Edugator is a tool, internal tool my department created to help our programming 1 and data structure and algorithm students. And so did you copy and paste? 60% said, yes, I copied and pasted the entire thing. This is problematic. They didn't read it. They just copied and pasted it. I don't think I have that slide in here because I tried to cut down my slides. But what they found was when they had to do these test cases, like in all of our programs, you have to do test cases to make sure your program works. And we've been automating that for a while because our intro class is 800 students. And so there's no way you can give everybody individual feedback. So we've been doing auto grading for a while. And so these test cases are one of the ways. So they just copied and pasted. They got it out. And so could they get the right answer? Yes, ChatGPT helped them get the right answer. The issue was when we asked deeper questions about their understanding that they should have developed as they were developing that program, they couldn't answer those questions, right? So something is missing. So here you can see in red, it's the students that did not copy and paste. You notice their numbers are much higher at being able to answer these questions accurately than the students in blue who are the ones that copied and pasted. And again, this is a smaller subset because this is because there was 10 test cases. This is the 10 that finally made it to the end and were able to get their test cases to work, but still weren't able to answer the questions, as well as students who had developed code their own. So we know something is missing. So why did they do it? Well, computer science is in engineering. So arguably, students are busy, they're tired. To get a job in industry and computer science, you have to do a whole bunch of things outside of the classroom, and it's special projects, working in clubs, all these things. And so it made their workload more manageable. That's why they did it. And so some experts say that we should maybe rethink the kind of assignments we give them. Maybe we should decrease the number of assignments so they don't feel so busy, so their workload is less, so they can pay attention more. Provide multiple modalities, right? So it's 800 students. There's no way I can do a 5-minute, let alone a 1-minute, tell me about this concept. And be able to make sure that they understand it effectively, right? But give them multiple modalities. They do a video, maybe they have to explain something in the classroom, maybe they have to do a reflection after their assignment, something that tells you that they understood. The test, you name it, right? Provide more motivating context. Oh, it'll help you get a job. This is something interesting to you. And so that only goes so far because students also procrastinate, and you can't procrastinate with things that require iteration. So Gen AI, my claim, requires students to shift their perspective on learning, right? They need to take ownership of their learning. I need them to shift away from this stereotype that education is production, it's about grades, it's about getting this degree, paying my dues, checking the box, right? I need them to understand those metrics, all those things do not equal learning. They need to own their learning, and they need to grow and transform. So every time they have a learning experience, be it formal or informal, they should be changed. Something should be different. I know me teaching this class for the first time, even though I had all the resources from the previous faculty member and I took a similar class during grad school, but I'm transformed every time I have to prep for class, every time I have to think about how do I make this digestible for my students, right? I'm changed. So if I'm changed and you're taking my class and you're not changed, what is the problem? And it was like, my TA said, they're using ChatGPT to answer the quizzes. I'm like, it was a 2-page article. You couldn't summarize a 2-page article, people? You're graduate students, right? So something's wrong. Something's wrong. And so I need to help make them value the learning that they're getting. So I got industry clients, so now they're working for industry clients. So hopefully the fact that maybe there's a dingle-dangle of a job, maybe they will perform because it's not for an assignment. But that's actually really hard. I have a class of 82 right now, so I had to recruit 15 clients, and some clients have 2 groups, and groups are about 5 to 6 people. That's too large for really good learning. But that's the carrot I had to dangle. So learning is a transformation. I need them to understand that and value knowing that I know this, not just I can Google it, I can just ask ChatGPT. Yes, if we have a question, we should be able to do that, but I should just know, right? When I'm sitting in meetings with my PhD students and they come with some idea and they think it's new, because I've read on the literature and go, oh, you need to cite such and such, you need to go read such and such. I know that because I read it. Right? How do we get them to know that, right? That reading is knowing your field. Reading is understanding, right? And building your own capability. Because when you're in a meeting and you need to give a design critique, because it's a design class, if you don't know the principles of design, you can't give a critique, you're just giving your opinion, right? And so I'm trying to help them understand how to value it. So courses are a tool to think with. Opportunities to gain perspective is what I want them to understand. Opportunities to gain knowledge and skill. So if you're in an English and language arts class, right, ChatGPT can paraphrase for you, can summarize. But I know from paraphrasing and summarizing, I've learned something. I have to distill those ideas down so I understand, what did I understand about them? What was that person trying to convey? What's the meaning? What should I have taken away from that? What happens if we take that away from students? Or in social studies, we were sitting at the table here and a gentleman said he's a history professor, and I can't remember of what decade or century, he mentioned. But history, I didn't really appreciate history till I got to college, because history I felt like was a memorizing of facts when I was in K-12. But now I realize it's about culture. It's about understanding dynamics of policy and civics and government and how we allocate scarce resources, right? So when history starts to repeat itself, I can kind of look at, well, what was the catalyst now? Was the catalyst then? Are they similar? How are they different, right? And so I think those are fun, important things for students to understand to be able to engage civically. And my favorite, STEM and computing skills. I mean, one of the reasons why I got into computer science is that I got to create something. When I first got into computer science, I was just really interested in astrology, and I had done all these hand calculations and did my chart and had my moon and my Venus and all the things. It was a lot of math, and I kept messing up. And I was like, my teacher said, you can pick any project you want to. I was like, this is my project. I never finished the project, but I started it, and the starting it made me passionate because I realized I could create something that not only solved my problems, but would solve other people's problems. Because then I started getting orders. Well, when you finish your program, can you do my chart? Right? So imbuing an entrepreneurial spirit, right? So we want students to be able to create and feel ownership and passion for those things. And so I want them to look at the syllabi, the lecture slides, the assignments, and learning objectives, and look at them differently. It's not just, this is what my professor is going to give to me. This is not what my teacher is going to give to me. These are the things I am expected to learn. So if I learn them from doing the assignments, I learn them from, doing my reading, I am responsible, and I'm checking my own understanding to make sure I've learned those things. After I finish my assignment, did I do it well? Did I understand it well? What questions do I have? How will I apply this later? I want them to be critically asking those questions so that they're growing their knowledge. And if I'm not meeting my objectives here, they can check me and say, hey, you said I was going to learn X, Y, and Z in this course, and I haven't learned that, right? And so I can step up and go, well, here's another way to learn that, right? But if they're not checking, they just pass the class. That's it, right? We want them to be proactive. So ultimately, I want them to foster their own ideas. I want them to develop creativity and connections to people. Because I think that's what uniquely makes us human, right? Is that we can connect with one another through language. So let's jump to workforce development. We've been doing work, I think we started this in 2018, is when we started AI for K-12. And in doing that, we realized we were building the teacher workforce capacity for K-12 to even teach AI, because up until that point, AI was something we taught in graduate school, and we were just starting to develop some undergraduate programs on it, or maybe even offering undergraduate courses, right? And so realizing that was an important workforce that we needed to develop. And along the way, we started connecting once University of Florida decided we are the AI university. We're going to make sure that not just computer science does AI, but all across the university, everybody understands AI. And there's some way to connect that back to their disciplinary needs. So there's many, I don't expect you to read this because it's super light and small font, but I can direct you to it on the website. But when we started our AI for GA curriculum, we just started off with thinking about what were all the areas that AI was going to impact. Medicine, art, marketing, public safety, which includes police and legal system, all of that, agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, all of those things. And all those little bubbles are just examples. So they can realize no matter if you're going to become a computer scientist or not, AI is going to affect the industry you're going into. And so when I was looking at your CSCTE career clusters, all of those same industries are listed, right? So I was reading some articles, and they were saying that just nationally, CTE, career and technical education, have been looking at how do we use AI in construction? How do we use these different emerging technologies in our disciplines, because it's coming. So starting in 2020, we started seeing legislative priorities from federal and state level, and I know you guys are super active. I love South Carolina. You guys were one of the first states to pass funding, like a lot of funding, to make sure that there's K-12 AI and CS education. And so the big focus is on creating an AI-ready workforce because, we're competing with China and we're competing with other countries that have very much a top-down system where we have very bottom-up, right? Every district gets to do their own thing, right? Local control. But because they're top-down, they can say everybody's going to learn AI, and to some degree, everybody's going to be learning AI. Is it going to vary? Of course, right? But they get to mandate that. We don't. We have to opt in. So my job is to convince you we should opt in. So as part of the work we were doing, we realized we needed to define what does an AI-enabled workforce look like. And we divided into 3 different categories. The AI end user, which is all of us, right? We use AI. If you're carrying a cell phone, you use AI, right? There's AI in it. There's AI potentially in your car. If you have one of a newer car, I do not, which keeps you in your lane and keeps you, from getting hit or whatever, or backing into things, right? So AI is there, and they've been testing out these technologies that are going to go into these self-driving cars for over a decade or so. Right? So we need to make sure that you're comfortable with using AI-enabled technology. We need to make sure that you understand what types of problems AI can, solve. And we want to make sure that you understand the common sources of biases and the limitations of AI. Right? So these are all things that we want to make sure that you have, and that you're conscious that AI might be making decisions about you, and you stay informed and make decisions about if that's okay. You opt in or you opt out. So in my house, we do not have an Alexa or Google Home because my husband's like, no, I like my privacy. Not allowed. I'm like, but you have an iPhone. He's like, Siri is not enabled. I was like, Siri comes on sometimes. But that's the only one he allows for some very random reason. But other than that, he's like, no. The middle tier is AI power users, which again, most likely all of us will become, because we need to think about how AI affects our profession, affects our career, right? And how do we use it to solve problems in our domain? And across all of these, what you'll see is being, designing and using AI ethically and responsibly, because I think that's all of our responsibilities, not just software developers, even though I do put a lot of responsibility on them. But it's all of our responsibility. And that third category is the role that I play at the university, where I'm educating future, AI researchers or AI professionals that'll go out to industry. And they need to make the tools that all of you all use, and they need to make sure that they work well for you and not just how an engineer thinks. So since it's easier than ever for people of all ages and grade levels to create AI applications, products, artifacts using large language models, computer vision models and multimodal models, all of those things, right? I think it's really, really important that we help them understand how to think critically about it, because we can almost create unconsciously without thinking about, well, this art is pretty nice. I wanted it to look like my favorite artist, but how does it look like my favorite artist? Is it stealing my favorite artist's work? If I create this, does that, drive the market down on their product? What happens, right? And what are some of the unintended consequences, right? Because humans are really bad at predicting the future, but it's probably not just humans, but we're really bad at it. So we want to make sure there's equity of access to AI education across geographic, socioeconomic, racial, ethnic groups. We want to make sure everybody has access, especially low-resource communities, and that we provide a variety of formal and informal learning opportunities. And we want to make sure everybody has a seat at the table. So I love this meeting because everybody has a seat at the table. I'm told we have business leaders, we have educators at the university, at the K-12, at community college, right? We have across the board, we have people in the room to have these conversations and build coalition. So one of the things we just released in September for our AI for Georgia project are these AI career cards, because the teachers kept saying, well, what are the possible careers for them? And so what we set out is we, looked through all of the different careers that were out there, and we broke it down into 4 different categories. Well, let me tell you about the cards first, and then I'll go to the careers. So each one of these cards is hand-designed by one of my undergraduates in computer science. She likes art, right? And so she said, I'll design the cards for you, because we were trying to find the clip art and do all the stuff, and it was looking cheesy. She's like, I want to draw them. And she made sure there was diversity and representation in all of the cards. And so on the front of the card, it tells you what they do in a very short statement. So this is our robotics engineer. She designs and develops robotic systems. And on the back of the card, which you see to the right, are examples of what are the kinds of things you might see in your everyday life or see on TV that they created. So delivery robots, warehouse robots, self-driving cars. We give them degree pathways. We give them the technical skills. And those technical skills, they align with those career and technical education frameworks. Stop. Okay. And then we give a medium salary, because you always have to dangle the carrot. And so we broke these down over 4 areas: core AI and data. So that's your data scientist and things like that. Language, so all the chatbots and large language models. And then product designer, so all the people that create the iPhones or the Google Homes or the whatever, to make sure they get to your pocket from start to finish. So University of Florida, I already told you, we're building an AI university. And so we have AI across the curriculum. So we have, I've lost count of all the certificate programs and degree programs across the university. But if you're interested, check it out at ai.ufl.edu. And we also have been collaborating. So part of this initiative wasn't just make University of Florida better, make the state of Florida better, build the state of Florida workforce. So we're working with FAMU, Florida Agricultural, we're just going to say FAMU because I'm going to mess up all the words there. Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. So we're working with them to make sure that we take the expertise from UF and make sure that they have it, and that their students get scholarships and their faculty get scholarships to upskill themselves. And so I'll close with this, and then I'll share some resources. We are the first AI-enabled workforce, right? Us in this room, right? We're reskilling ourselves so that we can educate our students. We're figuring out how AI fits in our disciplines to make sure that it works for us and it's not just an add-on, but it's actually something that advances our field in the work that we're doing. So I really appreciate you, and I will stop here because I do have a lot more to tell you because I'm just excited about the work that we're doing. But hopefully you learned a little bit about this. And I have specific resources for faculty, for administrators across the K-12 AI sector that might be helpful for you. And if you're an administrator, University of Florida kind of puts on something like this where you have things, where you have events for researchers, for K-12 faculty, and for administrators. So what I find is we're always learning, and every institution we go to, we learn something new, and we bring it back to the group. So if one or two of you get to go, you bring it back to the crew. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to, I'm going to let you entertain one or two questions, but one of the things I wanted to do,
Better than last time.
yeah, you did great. You did excellent. I was surprised. I'm like, wow, already? The University of Florida received a $50 million commitment from one of the founders of NVIDIA. And in that particular relationship, what the University of Florida decided that it would do, it would integrate AI across their entire curriculum. One of the first departments that raised their hand to say they want to lead in it was the English department. So oftentimes we think about AI being just a technical space. It's really a space where we live every day. I think the fact that the English faculty volunteered to be a part of this speaks to how we have to think about AI, how we have to think about that work. In addition to that, they enable the commitment also calls for some high-level equipment that they received across their institution. And the work they're doing is informing not just their institution, but it's informing the nation and it's informing the globe as to how we're going to participate. A theme that I have seen already, whether we intended for this theme to take place or not, is how important K through 12 is. So when you're asking those questions for students to own their own work, to own their learning, it's talking about those critical thinking skills that we got to teach young people at an early age. I think you said something that you correct yourself. You said students and kids, and then you said I meant teachers and students. Well, really, teachers, we are students. Administrators, we are still students. Professionals, industry partnerships, you're here because we are still students to see how we can better navigate this particular workplace. So again, Dr. Gardner, we thank you so very much for your work. I'm going to entertain one question or so because there's so much content she could have given, but if there's anything that spurs your interest, you want to have a follow-up question, and she'll be able to answer, please raise your hand. Okay, these are great students. But on behalf of USC Upstate, I want to give you this to say thank you very much. Thank you. Good. I've asked Christine to do something for me just for about 8 to 10 minutes. There's a part of her presentation that's going to speak to a few things that I think will be very informative. Talk about a few other things, and then we're going to pivot.
All right, so usually I go over time, and I was like, I'm going to be good this time. But I missed the fun part, which is telling you about all the cool stuff we've done right there. All the cool stuff that we've been doing on the K-12 level. So I love that the panel before just kind of teed us up for like, well, what are we doing in K-12? So that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about. The panelists talked about, investing in undergrads and making sure that we have internships. But I found that investing in our K-12 teachers is the only way we're going to get K-12 AI education to be a thing. And so that also means reaching back also to looking at our pre-service teacher education. So in 2018, we launched the AI for K-12 initiative. And our goal at that time, there was no K-12 AI at all. We had 2 guidelines or 2 standards in the Computer Science Teachers Association around AI. So there was no real, and those were really for more advanced students that had taken the AP Computer Science A exam. So there was no real opportunity for students to learn about AI, and we were still trying to get computer science into the schools. And so leveraging that, we've gotten computer science into a number of schools. We were trying to figure out how do we get AI into the schools. And at that time, we started getting calls from teachers saying, you know, early adopters saying, hey, my kids are interested. We're starting to hear more about AI. My kids are interested. How do I learn about AI so I can teach it to them? And so they said, what do I need to be able to know, and what should my students be able to do with AI? And so we used that, and we collaborated with 16 other K-12 educators on each of the grade bands, K2, 3, 5, middle school, and high school, to actually come up with those guidelines. And the second thing we did was we developed a curated AI resource directory. And then through that, it actually spawned the third goal of developing community, because people were like, oh, I'm not alone in this work. There's K-12 educators, you know, in other states doing this. I want to know them. There's, you know, curriculum providers, all these different people. How do we get together? And we started having convenings starting in 2018. And so what we developed were several things. One was, what was the plan for how we would integrate AI successfully, right? There's already a lot in the school system, in the school day. How do we make sure this works? Well, computer science was already integrating into elementary school, basically through, you know, either a tech or a media team member would kind of push into those classrooms and kind of provide one day of, you know, computer science education. So we need to do the kind of a similar thing like that for elementary school. At the middle school and high school level, we have a great opportunity to be able, because there's already computer science courses going on there, or beginning to go on, and because there's legislation in this state, it's gonna happen, and it's already begun happening. And so you have the opportunity to integrate AI into those middle school IT classes, or computer science classes, or robotics classes. And then you also have the opportunity to offer standalone AI courses, because you're starting to offer these career and technical education courses at the high school pathways, as well as in middle school. And then what we've seen from our work in Georgia is that we have teachers that are in science or English or social studies, and they're like, hey, I want to do AI too. I can see how it can help my students. And so they're starting to offer modules or kind of spread out a lesson once a week around AI. And so in 2020, we saw the launch. Georgia was our first state to actually launch a career and technical education framework. It's a 3-course framework, which is Foundations of Artificial Intelligence Concepts, and Artificial Intelligence Applications. And this is the way that they're actually trying to equip all of Georgia high school students to be able to have AI. We took a page out of their book, and around the same time, we had already started creating these frameworks in AI for K-12, which I'll show you in a second. And so we developed a 4-course sequence, AI in the World, which is really trying to help students recognize and see AI in their everyday lives. Applications of AI, actually being able to kind of play around with some of these code and low-code tools that Microsoft and Google have for them to actually start building applications, then give them the programming ability, because we've whet their appetite, we've made them interested, and then go back into getting more of a foundational machine learning course. And so what we really wanted them to understand was the limitations of AI, to be able to develop this system thinking. The panelists were talking about problem solving and critical thinking. That's the goal of this curriculum. And then the ethical decision making, right? That was huge, because we were like, we don't want a generation of people who are just creating tech because tech is cool. We want them to create tech because it's ethical, it works, and we thought about people, and we're designing it to work well with people. And we know that they need to be lifelong learners. So this begins to develop that framework for them. And so all of those frameworks are built around our AI for K-12, 5 big ideas in AI. And that's our articulation of what students should know about AI, broken down into 5 core areas. So for big idea 1 is computer perception, how computers see the world using sensors. Big idea 2 is representation and reasoning, how do computers and AI represent the world internally, and then reason on that to be able to make decisions. Big idea 3 is how AI learns from data. Big idea 4 is natural interactions. How do we create, like what knowledge do computers need to understand about our everyday lives, our culture, all of those things to be able to interact naturally with us, right? Because Siri and Alexa don't really, pre-GPT interact naturally with us. We have to have like a cadence, right? But now we can just start talking, to GPT and start getting the responses that we want. That's a little bit more natural, right? And so what kind of knowledge did it have to be trained on to be able to do that? And if we start to do some of these specialty things like in manufacturing or medicine, what kind of knowledge base do these models have to be able to build on to be able to interact naturally with us? And then, of course, societal impacts. And when we first created this, what we call the big idea wheel, societal impacts was one of the 5 out on the outside of the wheel. And the teacher said, if you make it one of the 5, it'll be something that gets pushed back to the end. It needs to be at the center, so that way it touches each one of the other 4 big ideas, and that is so true. So we developed around each one of those 5 big ideas a grade band progression chart with roughly about 4 or 5 concepts per big idea, broken down by grade band in each one of the columns. And so here you can see we have, if I just kind of zoomed in on 3.5, this is big idea 1, perception. And we have what we call orange boxes, which are these kind of big key ideas. And what we want students to know is perception is the abstraction of meaning. It's not just a sensor getting, a sensory signal. It's the extraction of meaning from that signal. So when, you are driving and your car kind of pulls back to say you're going over the line, it doesn't just detect the line, it recognizes that, when I'm outside the line, I need to stay within the line, and so I need to correct by this proportion, right? And so this is the kind of information we want them to know. So each one of the big ideas has a learning objective, an enduring understanding, and some of them have unpacked and activities just to help teachers understand what each one of them is about. And so our goal is to make sure that students, is to support students' AI exploration, getting them curious, right? So that was one of the things is we don't want students to just go in and go, tell me what to do. We want them to be curious. We want them to keep investigating. We want them to keep pushing. Well, how do we do that? Well, first we need to teach them that AI isn't magic, right? We really need to understand what AI is and kind of look under the hood, right? And for most part, AI is very, very much black box. And so one of my colleagues has been doing a really good job in helping us steward a community of people who are actually creating resources where you can kind of see into a neural network when it's doing computer vision and understanding how to recognize faces. Or it's looking into speech recognition algorithms so you can see that how it reasons about ambiguity when we say words. And so that's really important because we want them to be able to develop mental models about AI. We want them to be able to look at how something's working and go, I wonder if it's working like this, and be able to investigate that, right? Interrogate those agents to really understand why that behavior happens. We want them to know about AI algorithms. Some of them are super sophisticated, so they're not going to be able to program them. But we can use kinesthetic activities to help them understand the function of neural networks and things like that. And one of the key things that I heard up here was also talking about, societal impacts and ethics. Well, that comes through studying case studies and understanding, how does AI impact people and cultures from multiple perspectives. And so that's one of my favorites is the case studies. We have one called the Sleeping Tesla Drivers, and we've kind of compiled all these videos of people falling asleep while driving their Teslas in California on the highway for many hours. And students have to investigate what's the level of automation that the car is operating on, and what's, not what they advertise it, because they advertise it as you need to have your hands on the steering wheel and be alert at all times, but it's still operating. What's going on there, right? Who's responsible if there's an accident? Is it the driver? Is it the car manufacturer? Who's responsible? And then lastly, we want to encourage students to build their own, we want to, stop it. Too many. Okay. We want to encourage students to build their own applications. That's to get them excited about something. Like the same way I was excited about building my astrology thing, I want them to be really excited about building whatever, if it's that TikTok thing, where you kind of smile and then it decides, what your positive affirmation is, or if it puts a funny filter on it, or, it actually does something more practical, right? Identifying, patterns in data that you really care about, right? We want them to be able to do that because we want them to understand how AI works, the limitations of AI, and to really develop an understanding of where bias might be in the data set or in the, in the application or the cutoffs, wherever. All the places that humans get to make decisions, we want them to know, to be empowered to think about data and think about those models so that we can have the best possible impact. So we have a bunch of resources in our AI for K-12 resource directory. So if you're looking for curriculum or teacher professional development materials or anything, we have most of it referenced here. And if we don't have it in our library, we reference to another library that does have it. So if you're looking for resources and looking for how do you uptrain your teachers and your students, there are resources out there. You're not starting from a blank slate. So I'll also just kind of give a shout out to this Reimagining CS Pathways project by the Computer Science Teachers Association, where they're thinking about how do we change the CSTA, the CS standards, which are our national computer science standards, to include AI, cybersecurity, quantum, and all these different emerging technologies. And so that filters back into states for you all to make decisions about how do you change your standards to make sure you include those things. So this is ongoing work, and we're currently working with them on that. So let's continue to build teacher capacity, provide opportunities for teacher professional development, try to see if your teachers can go work on the university to have research experience and build their confidence in AI. So I will leave it at that because really we are at time now. But I hope this is helpful. Please visit aifork12.org. You'll find all of these resources and more. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any when you start this work.
Let's give Christina another round of applause. I wanted her to kind of finish this part of her presentation up because we have so many educators in here. We have district leaders, and I think it's important as we build on this work, we see where it starts. We got to have a very strong K through 12 space in order to be able to be effective. It all trickles down into that.